I've run into technical difficulties. What the heck? Hold up. Why is there no audio? Hold on, everybody. Hold on. Here we go. All right, now starting. An extraordinary atmospheric phenomena was noticed in this region at 7:43 a.m. A noise as a strong wind was heard, followed immediately by a fearful crash, accompanied by a subterranean shock, which caused buildings to tremble. One had the impression that some huge beam or heavy stone had possibly struck the building. This was followed by two further equally forceful blows. The interval between the first and the third blows was accompanied by an extraordinary underground roar, like the sound of a number of trains passing simultaneously over rails. And then for 5 or 6 minutes, followed by a sound like artillery fire, between 50 and 60 bangs, becoming gradually fainter while the ground trembled. As eyewitnesses relate, before the first bangs were heard, a heavenly body of a fiery appearance cut across the sky from south to north, inclined to the northeast. Neither its size nor shape could be made out owing to its speed and particularly its unexpectedness. However, many people in different villages distinctly saw that when the flying object touched the horizon, a huge flame shot up and cut the sky in two. The glow was so strong that it was reflected in rooms whose windows faced north. Apparently the glow continued for at least a minute, since many peasants in the fields noticed it. The bangs were heard as soon as the tongue of flame disappeared. On the island opposite the village, horses began to whinny and cows to low and run wildly about. One had the impression that the earth was just about to gape open and everything would be swallowed up in the abyss. Fearful bangs resounded from somewhere, shaking the earth, and the invisibility of the source inspired a kind of superstitious terror. People were literally dumbfounded. And welcome to Phantom Universe. Today we're going to be talking about the Tunguska event, and I was supposed to have all of these little pictures turned off, but you're getting a sneak peek on everything we're going to be going over right now. I was supposed to turn all this off, but hey, what are you going to do? So, June 30th, 1908. An object from space lit up the early morning sky over top of a very remote region of northern Russia in an area called Tunguska. The size of the object is estimated to be between 328 and 656 feet in length, or around 100 to 200 meters. The estimated energy of the kinetic energy of its entry resulted in a massive explosion, peaking around 5.8 miles above the forest floor of Tunguska. Let me pull up my notes real quick just so I can have them in front of me, because I know I'm going to get some of the information wrong if I don't look at them right now. But anyway, so going between 33,000 and 45,000 miles per hour, the kinetic energy of its entry resulted in a massive explosion peaking around 5.8 miles above the forest floor of Tunguska. The estimated energy of the explosion is between a 10 and 14 megaton bomb, likely around 15. And for some perspective, the little boy atomic bomb dropped during World War II was only 15 kilotons. There are 1,000 kilotons in 1 megaton, so it was the equivalent of 1,000 little boy atomic bombs all going off as a stream across the sky. The center of that explosion would have been around 18,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which is hotter than the surface of the sun, which is right here. And eyewitnesses described it as the sky was being split into by fire, and it would have been a miraculous thing to have experienced. The kinetic energy of its entry, not the kinetic energy, but the intense heat and pressure of its entry vaporized the fragment before it could ever hit the ground, releasing all of its energy into the atmosphere, where forest fires were immediately set ablaze, followed by a shockwave so destructive, 18 million trees were stripped of their branches fractions of a second before being broken and toppled at their bases, some of them being uprooted completely and literally thrown. This picture. Flattened like toothpicks, radiating outward from the epicenter, were over 200 square miles of forest was incinerated instantly, with the total blast radius of destruction roughly covering an area of 800 square miles, creating a shape similar to a butterfly's wing impression in the forest, just flattened all of these trees, making just devastation everywhere. But at the center of Ground Zero, there was a ring of trees that were still standing, and they were mostly stripped of their branches, leaving hundreds of trunks sticking out of the ground like burnt posts. And at Ground Zero itself, to this day, very little vegetation other than weeds and grass grows, almost as if the area had been sterilized from all biological life deep into the earth. And this picture right here was taken around in the 80s, and this one right here is what it looks like right now. You can see that shape right there. There's a little bit of vegetation in there, but honestly not a lot. It was registered as a 5.0 earthquake, and early installed microbarographs, which is a device that measures pressure waves in the atmosphere, were installed in 6 early meteorological stations throughout Leyton, Cambridge, Petersfield, with the other 3 throughout London. All these devices, along with some others in Europe, registered the shock wave of the explosion as it circled the planet twice, also being detected in Washington, D.C. However, before the work of Leonid Kulik, nearly 20 years later after the event, no one at the time had any idea that it had come from Tunguska. Thousands of people, hundreds, even thousands of miles away, saw from western Siberia to the British Isles, saw remarkable atmospheric phenomena for days fading into weeks after the event, with remarkably bright and glowing nights. Nights were almost as bright as day, with glowing silverly clouds against the background of a brilliant, colorful sunset. Newspaper articles would eventually follow after this event of a lot of speculation. People at the time really didn't have a solid understanding of meteors and things coming from space into the atmosphere and, causing problems. And so there was a lot of speculation on what caused it. World War I was really starting around this time period, so some people thought it could have been some kind of bomb or weapon. Nikola Tesla is also theorized as to have created some kind of death weapon, and people thought it was from him. And then, of course, you have to throw aliens in there as well, because got to throw the aliens in there. But Leonid Kulik began to collect newspaper articles and rumors of meteors that had fallen within Russia and the Soviet Union, and was hired. Actually, no. He was first. He studied. Hold on. Let me get this right. Okay. No. First of all, because of the Great Depression, along with the effects of World War I, very little funding was going into peacetime scientific research, specifically the young study of meteorology and the study of impacts into the Earth. Leonid Kulik is one of the early fathers of meteorology, and his team's efforts to trek through the remarkably harsh and hellish conditions of the frozen taiga to document and research the Tunguska event is truly a heroic thing, and I believe should be known more. Let me pull up his picture again right here. This is his awesome picture. Really cool looking dude. I mean, I absolutely love those glasses. Love those glasses. I would totally wear a pair of those around. You better believe it. But after serving in World War I, Kulik was studying mineralogy. He was teaching mineralogy in the city of Tomsk, where he was charged with the assignment of documenting and researching meteorites that had fallen within the Soviet Union. And his research led him on a trip through Siberia in search for meteorites, and they found a few specimens, but nothing really conclusive. But it was on this journey to find meteorites that he came in contact with second-hand accounts of the Tunguska blast, and he had heard rumors of it before through newspaper articles and things he had received, and I'll be reading one of those things he received here in a moment. But he heard about this massive explosion taking place, and he really wanted to go and find where this was. But at the time, he did not have the means of making such a journey through that harsh environment. And there were very poor maps of the area at the time that he was attempting to research, so such a trip at the time was just impossible. However, he eventually went home, and he received a letter by a man named Vologshin, dated November 21st, 1921, and the letter stated, The Evenki people, who were camping on the Pokamanaya Tunguska, described how strong air pressure laid low a strip of forest and killed several reindeer belonging to one of the killing several reindeer belonging to one of the Evenki, Ivan Ilyich. So that was one of the letters he received, and very interesting stuff. Another letter that Kulik received in 1923, I think this is actually might have been right after his, no, this was after his trip through Siberia, so my apologies. That first letter was before he made his trip, I think, and then this letter is when he got home, and this letter was sent to Kulik in 1923 by a geologist who had interviewed a local Tungus herdsman whose brother experienced this in 1908. Quote, 15 years ago, his brother, who was Tungus and could speak little Russian, lived on the river Chambay. One day, a terrible explosion occurred, the force of which was so great that the forest was flattened for many versts along the banks of the river Chambay. His brother's hut was flattened to the ground, its roof carried away by the wind, and most of his reindeer fled in fright. The noise deafened his brother, and the shock caused him to suffer a long illness, which is very curious. Almost with other testimony witness accounts of it, it's almost like a shell shock type of thing. These people were so terrified of what was happening that they literally had some kind of PTSD from it. So for 6 years after his main trip to Siberia, Kulik was defending his position that more research needs to be done into meteorology, and it was really hard apparently for him to get the funding to do so. However, in 1927, Kulik was finally given funding for an expedition to locate the Tunguska blast site by the Russian Academy of Sciences. Kulik would then take the Trans-Siberian Railway to the city of Taishet, which was about 350 miles away from the presumed blast site. Finally arriving in a place called Venevera that he, on his trip to Siberia the first time, from the secondhand accounts, he was able to kind of triangulate, I hit the mic, he was able to triangulate roughly where the explosion was, and he put the city, or the small little village of Venevera, at the place that he wanted it to go. Let me pull up another picture for you guys real quick. But this is some of the paintings of, you know, what it looked like right here. I don't know exactly when these were painted, but anyway, so Kulik arrived in Venevera around the end of March and hired a guide named Ilya Potapovich Petrov to guide him through the forest. And he began to take the eyewitness accounts and write them down from some of the Tunguski people that he was with at the time. And one of them was a quote by a man named S.B. Semenov, okay? And I quote this one here. Now, it starts. I don't remember the year exactly, but more than 20 years ago, when the fallow land was being plowed up, I was sitting on the porch of the house at the trading station of Vanavera at breakfast time and looked towards the north. I had just raised my axe to hoop a cask, when suddenly in the north the sky was split in two, and high above the forest the whole northern part of the sky appeared to be covered with fire. At that moment I felt a great heat, as if my shirt had caught fire. I wanted to pull off my shirt and throw it away, but at that moment there was a bang in the sky, and a mighty crash was heard. I was thrown to the ground about 3 sagens away from the porch, and for a moment I lost consciousness. My wife ran out and carried me into the hut. The crash was followed by a noise like stones falling from the sky or guns firing. The earth trembled, and when I lay on the ground I covered my head because I was afraid that stones might hit it. At that moment when the sky opened, a hot wind as from a cannon blew past the huts from the north. Really, really remarkable. Now, Semenov's daughter, who was just down the hill by the creek, also witnessed this event and gave her testimony as well, stating, I was 19. Let me change this. I was 19, and when the meteorite fell, I was at the trading station of Anavara. Murfa Brukunova and I had come to the spring for water. Murfa began to draw water, and I was standing beside her facing north. Suddenly, before me, I saw the sky in the north open to the ground and fire pour out. We were terrified, but the sky closed again, and immediately afterwards a bang like gunshots were heard. We thought that stones were falling from the sky and rushed off in terror, leaving our pail by the spring. I ran with my head down and covered because I was afraid that stones might fall on it. When we reached the house, we saw my father, Semenov, lying unconscious near the barn opposite the porch of the house. Murpha and I carried him into the hut. We were terribly frightened at the time. The fire was brighter than the sun. During the bangs, the earth and the huts trembled greatly. The noises at first were very loud and seemed to be right above our heads, and then they became quieter and quieter. Again, really intense. Like, just imagine that. It's amazing. And people have, and we're going to talk about that. Modern times, people have experienced a fraction of what the Tunguska event was like, but it's just amazing reading into it. But so after taking these eyewitness accounts, Kulik, put together his team and plotted a route to go into the frozen taiga. And here you can see a picture of Kulik. This is him in the blast radius right here, taking some measurements. And this is, I think that might be Ilya Potapovich Petrov right there next to him, but I'm not positive on that. But he took a group of people into the area, and it took them weeks. Actually, I forget. Let me come down here real quick. How long did it take them? On April 30th, he set out. No, sorry, that was their second time. I went too far. Here we go. On April 18th, with a pack of horses, trading them along the way for reindeer, several days into wading and hiking their way through the swamps, they were running low on food and fresh water, and many of them also had infections from injuries they acquired on the way. So they were already super exhausted, and the last 3 days of their journey, which is now, I believe it was 10 weeks. Yeah, 10 weeks into their expedition, with the last 3 days of burdensome hiking, they finally arrived to the edge of the flattened forest. And Kulik would go on to write in his journal the impressions he had at the time when he first came over that. And I'm going to pull this up here. But let me kind of pull these dudes down and read this to you guys with a specific picture on the screen. Hold on, where did it go? Here we go. This guy. All right, here we go. This is a quote from Kulik's journal. I still cannot sort out my chaotic impressions of this excursion. From our observation point, no sign of forest can be seen, for everything has been devastated and burned. One has an uncanny feeling when one sees 20 to 30-inch thick giant trees snapped across like twigs and their tops hurled many meters away. The result of even a cursory examination exceeded all the tales of the eyewitnesses and my wildest expectations. Just amazing. It's amazing. So when they came over the edge and they saw that destruction, it was so intense and emotional for the guides Kulik had hired that they literally abandoned the mission and fled in fright. Because the Tunguski people, and Kulik went on to write about this as well, had a very deep dread towards the landscape of the destruction. And they all avoided the subject. Kulik found that it was very, very difficult to even speak with the people about the event. They were so hesitant, they didn't want to talk about it at all because it was so traumatic for them. And he even found that they had created a religion based off of the events where the fire god Adgi had descended to earth, destroying the forest and landscape as a punishment for the transgressions of the wicked. And the people, let me pull this back up here. Where'd it go? I just had my notes. Where'd it go? Oh, here we go. It was believed that the fire god Adgi had descended to earth, destroying the forests and animals, and the people had a great dread towards the landscape, and very few would even consider a journey into it. So the fact that these men got that far to get to the edge, they had just had enough, and they went back, forcing Kulik to also return back to Vanavera, where he then hired a new guide and made a second attempt back to the site. Now, just imagine that you You hire these dudes and you spend 10 weeks with them cutting your way through an extremely thick, swampy taiga with freezing temperatures and also horrible mosquitoes. I'll show you guys here a video here in a second of the type of they had to consistently always wear like these nets and like these hats and special equipment to keep the bugs off of them because it was just horrible. But you spend 10 weeks with these dudes to get to this place, and then they just quit after you arrived. Man, I would have been pretty upset. I'd be like, are you serious? Anyway, so they went back, and on April 30th, he set out again, nearly 3 months after he originally left home. And people back at home were beginning to worry about Kulik. They were like, we haven't even heard from him. Communication at the time was basically non-existent, or slower than a turtle's pace. So there was no way to get into contact with anybody, and some of them even presumed he was dead. However, Kulik was not dead, but fighting the melt water from the seasonal melting ice. He had a short window. This is another reason why I would have been so frustrated. They had a short window to get to the site because they didn't want to fight the melt water from the seasonal melting ice. But them abandoning it forced him to now return during a very wet season. And so they created rafts and made their second attempt out there, where they eventually got to Ground Zero, and Kulik would go on to write about what Ground Zero looked like. He said that the soil ground heaved outward from the spot in giant waves, like waves and water. Now let me come back here to my pictures real quick and try to find that picture. Oop, wrong picture. Let's see, Ground Zero. Nope. There we go. So you see like the ripples on the ground. This is Ground Zero right here. And it's almost like the ground had like, I don't even know. And it was like spongy. I'm not positive on that one. I could be wrong on that one. But anyway, so they finally got back to Ground Zero, and he began to plot out the layout of the trees as they splayed outward, and they also were able to calculate, roughly the size of devastation, which eventually got revised in the 80s when they had a more thorough investigation. But obviously that happened in the 80s and wasn't during Kulik. But so he takes samples of the soil, and he does whatever work he can there, and he eventually comes home and makes a second trip out. Now I'm going to pull up a YouTube video, and I'm going to snap through this real quick. So this YouTube video right here is called, let me slide this over some, the Tunguska meteorite, and I'm just going to put this back here now. And this is a really good documentary. I highly recommend watching this real quick. But this is their second trip out there, and they're using rafts and stuff. And you can see the meltwater season. It's rough. There's Kulik right there. Strapping dude. Looking dope. Could you imagine? Like, here you have all this scientific equipment, and you're loading it up into this, makeshift raft, which is good quality. I'm not saying, but you're loading it up in this raft, and you're going through the frozen swamps. Now, let me pull up here to footage of the forest. So they had to cut their way because they only could get so far on the water rafts, and they eventually had to abandon them because the rapids became too intense, and they had to literally cut their way through a broken forest to get all of their gear and equipment through there. So we're talking extremely labor-intensive work just to get to the site. This is before any of the research had even started. Now, they were able to create a streamlined system of getting to and from there, but this initial journey there was extremely rough. You can also see them there wearing the nets around their heads to keep the mosquitoes off them. And it's getting ready to come up here. There you go. This is like the first shots of this. Now remember, this is nearly 20 years after the event. So like the forest is beginning to grow back, and you can see that with like some of the trees at the top of the hill there. When this would have initially happened, this place would have been just ash. It would have been black, because all of this would have been on fire when it initially happened. That right there is Ground Zero. You can see the way the ground looks, and there were these potholes, these holes in the ground that are very were they Kulik thought that they were impact craters where something had hit the ground, and later expeditions to the site, they were excavating out the holes and like uh, draining all the water out of them and digging trenches in them, trying to find a fragment of a meteor. Oh, there's the bugs. Look at the bugs. Oh, I would freak out. Oh, oh, that's so rough, so rough. But anyway, so they eventually were digging out stuff, but Kulik never found a fragment of a meteorite. Never found anything, and this was a big problem for people who were trying to fund his. Here they are trenching out the water right here. It was a big problem because he. Let me turn this off now. Come back over here real quick. The whole point of them funding him to do these expeditions, which took a very, very long period of time, multiple trips, just to find nothing, people began to pull their funding away. And one of Kulik's last trips out there, they were taking aerial photography of the area. Here we can see one of the planes that they were using. They were taking aerial photography, and they were able to, see how the trees were all splayed out and whatnot. But this is also when around World War II when it began, which was in 1941, right? He was planning his last trip for 1943 is what it was. And World War II then began, and he went to fight in World War II, where he was eventually captured and died in a Nazi prison from typhus, April 24th, 1942. So tragic loss right there. And then there was basically really no attention put towards Tunguska after that. There was another impact that took place. I forget its name. Dang. Hold on, let me find it. I gotta find it in my notes. It's in here somewhere. Ugh. Anyway, there was another meteorite impact that took place in Russia, like on the west coast of it. I forget its name, but anyway, they found craters. They were able to use their instruments to locate the actual fragments, and they also began to take soil samples. And from the soil samples they brought home, under a microscope they found these microscopic spheres. And this documentary actually has a picture of them here. So let me come back over here real quick. They have. Fast forward here. Hold on. Almost there. Is this it? No, that's them. Skipping. Come on. This is them doing all the tests and chemical stuff on the... There we go. Microscopic spheres. Okay, these spheres were found in soil samples at this later impact in the 60s. And so they were like, wait a minute, did Kulik mention any type of spheres in his soil samples? And it was a yes, there were spheres in Kulik's soil samples. And they eventually went back to Kulik's soil samples and found a plethora of these spheres in them. And how these spheres are created, very specific, because some of them are magnetic, but when an object is entering the Earth's atmosphere, the intense heat and pressure is vaporizing the fragment as it's coming in, causing it to shed material. And we're talking very, very, very tiny molten pieces of whatever it's made out of that can cling and stick to its surface or shed off into the atmosphere, where it then rapidly cools down into these super tiny microscopic spheres that eventually settles to the Earth. This is a key fingerprint of cosmic impacts. Like, for an example, the KPG boundary, the boundary that killed, where the impact of the meteor that killed the dinosaurs, we find microspheres. We find microspheres in the Younger Dryas boundary, which is, a lot of people are now believing, and it is more widely accepted, that it was a massive impact event causing Younger Dryas. And here we have microspheres in the Tunguska field, but also the other field that I was trying to find the name earlier, I thought I had it in this section right here, but I apparently didn't type it out. It's my fault, whatever. But anyway, we find these microspheres, key fingerprints of some kind of impact or something entering the atmosphere is when we find these spheres. Now, we do find some of them in volcanoes, but not the way we do when they enter the atmosphere, right? Volcanoes do make a different type and not exactly the same as these ones. Normally, these are made up of materials that are not normally found on the surface of Earth. So, why is the Tunguska event so important? Let me come back down in here. So, the Tunguska event happened June 30th, 1908. Now, the thing about that is that the Earth passes through what is called the Taurid meteor stream twice a year. Here you can see at the bottom of the green circle, that is in June. Yes, this is late June, early July. And at the top, around 1 o'clock on the circle here is around late October, early November. Twice a year we pass through this meteor stream, which is why we get meteorites during this time of year. Like Halloween, we have the Halloween meteorites. Go outside between, October 28th through like November 5th, I want to say, is a gap in between that. And there's a chance that you will see something, screeching across the sky at very fast speed. It's just, it's just a little tiny speck though. Okay. Normally we get hit by little tiny stuff, but sometimes that stuff can be really big. And the Tunguska event is very, very likely a fragment or a member of the Taurid meteor stream that just so happened to line up with us perfectly back in 1908. Now, another interesting thing about this, now I highly recommend looking into Randall Carlson's work. And you guys have seen me mention Randall Carlson on here before. I've mentioned what he's been going on, but Randall Carlson has been a major influence into my research. But his lessons on the Taurids and like the Mithras slaying the bull mythology in from what culture was that? Iranian. It's the Iranian god of the sun, Mithras, slaying the Taurid. Is it Taurid or Taurid? Yeah, it's Taurid, the bull. Actually, I have a picture. Here we go. This is one of the depictions of the god Mithras slaying the bull. Now, how is this connected? So, Taurid, or let me make sure I get this right. Taurus. The bull is named Taurus because it's the constellation. The bull represents the constellation Taurus. And I don't have my picture. I thought I put a picture in here. Hold on. I know I downloaded a picture for this. I must have forgot to put it in my... Maybe it was one of those like pictures that didn't download. So let's just go to Google over here then. Hold on, guys. I've got this. Don't worry. Main browser cam. There we go. Let's see. Oh, I totally spelled that wrong. Totally spelled that wrong. Ignore that. So Taurus, right? The Taurus constellation, or the bull. Pull that guy up. Okay. So, Mithras is slaying the bull, and he's casting his dagger into the shoulder of the bull. Now, the area in which the Taurid meteor stream comes from in late June is from the shoulder of the constellation Taurus. Let me come back over here real quick to this picture. Notice how he's stabbing the shoulder, and in other depictions, I think I might have another one here. Yeah. So you can see there's a dog lapping up the blood that is emerging out from the shoulder of the bull. Now, in the sky, during this meteor shower, we see that the meteors are emerging from the shoulder. And I have, this is kind of, let me turn these off so you can see this. Here, see how these meteorites are all going in their own direction, and there's a center point. There's a vanishing point of where they're all emerging from. Imagine that the shoulder of Taurus is right there at the very center of that. So what Randall Carlson talks about is that it's very likely that our planet has been encountering objects from the Taurid meteor stream for thousands of years on a consistent basis. This isn't one of those things where, it was originally thought that, we might get hit by a large object every, so 1,000 years, right? Or 100,000 whatever years. And more things are starting to suggest that no, these things actually happen on a far more, what's the word I'm looking for? Far more, it's on the edge of my tongue. You know what I'm talking about. It happens far more often than we originally thought, okay? Excuse me. Toy. Had like a... Don't you love those brain moments in your brain where you need to talk and you want to say the word, but your brain just like, no, we're not gonna do it. I'm like, wow, you total douchebag. But so, there was a recent study. I should have pulled this up too. Napier, I think is his name. If you go, let's just go. Let me just go to it real quick. Browser cam. Let's see. Cosmic Tusk. Cosmic Tusk. Let me try to find this real quick. I was trying to read this one time on a live stream and I had a hard time with it. Because sometimes reading for me can be difficult. Anyway, there's a study that suggests that the work of Napier, I think is his name, I wish I could remember his name right now, is vindicated, where he says that the Taurid meteor stream is far more condensed and packed than we originally thought, and there are far more objects in the Taurid meteor stream than we previously thought, and that we could encounter them more often. Now, we have been hit by some things before. If you don't recall, in 2013, in Chelyabinsk, Russia, there are a whole bunch of dash cam footage of a meteor or a piece of a comet coming into the atmosphere. Now, it was only about the size of about 18 Hiroshima nuclear atomic bombs going off, which is still substantial, but it's only a fraction of the size of what the Tunguska event was. Let me pull up a video of that. Hold on. Because I love looking at this, and especially the noise. The noise is what I want you to pay attention to when I pull this up. Hold on. So turn this on and come over here to YouTube. All right. So this is some dash cam footage of this. Massive. Brighter than the sun. This happened in early morning. Now, this is not a member of the Taurid. This is I forget exactly when. This was in February. So not. Я сейчас подойду, подожди. Listen. But yeah, this was just in 2013, and thankfully, this did not kill anything. If it was just a little bit bigger, or moving a little bit faster, or was coming in at a more steeper angle, it wouldn't have been 1,500 injuries from lacerations of glass and people's eardrums and actual burns, but deaths. And the object never even hit the ground. It never impacted the ground. Fragments did hit the ground. The largest fragment recovered was found in a frozen lake. It punched like a 10-meter hole right into a frozen lake that they had retrieved. The object, which was around 1,500 tons, no, it was around like 800 or so tons, I think is what it was. But we get hit by these things often. Way more often than we originally thought. Now, I'm not saying that anything's going to hit us tomorrow. What I want you to think about is just imagine... No, I remember what I was going to say about that study. The study from Napier, from the Cosmic Tusk website, that I'll put in the description down below if you guys are interested when I find it after this video or after this live stream. The study was connecting the Taurid meteor stream to the Younger Dryas impact event. I'm pretty sure that was kind of one of the conclusions from the study, that around 20,000 years ago, a giant comet named Enki entered the inner solar system and began to go into several fragmenting events, causing this massive debris field circling the inner solar system of the planet, or inner solar system of the sun, that Earth passed through twice a year. And in these early stages of this comet fragmenting, there would have been major bombardment events over and over and over again on a seasonal basis. And kind of comes back to Mithras slaying the bull. I believe, along with Randall Carlson, that this myth is the memory of this event that was taking place on a consistent basis to remind the people of what's getting ready to happen eventually. As long as you can maintain the information within the story well enough, and I don't know the story perfectly, so I'm not going to try to say what it is, but it's not just with this myth either. It's also with the myth of Phaeton. The Phaeton rides his father's sun chariot across the sky and eventually causes a whole lot of problems, burning the earth and causing major destruction. And it's likely that these stories are memories of actual events that had taken place that have been warped and twisted by time into these fantasy sounding stories that really don't make sense to anybody without the awareness of the knowledge hidden inside of it. Whenever I'm whenever I read anything ancient now, like whether it be the Bible or some kind of other holy sacred text or just anything ancient, I no longer have this idea that, this is all just made up nonsense and that these people were just trying to control everybody. Has it been used for that? Yes, but that wasn't its purpose. These ancient stories are there to try to tell the future of the events that had happened in the past in hopes to possibly even wake the future up and realize that it could happen again. And we know it will happen again. We just don't know exactly when. The other question is, even if, let's say, the powers that be did find out that there was a massive object coming to hit the planet to cause massive problems, would they even tell us? I mean, they would probably hold off on telling everybody until it was undeniable, until amateur astronomers began to see objects in the sky. Would all of a sudden the cat's out of the bag? There would probably be a whole campaign of different disinformation, kind of like Don't Look Up, which was a decent show, but just the way they were portraying the political spectrums in that show was just honestly laughable. It's like, wow, you guys are really out of touch. But anyway, I don't, who's to say they would even tell us? I don't know. But the Tunguska event eventually, let me get back on track here. I've been ranting for a little bit too long. Back on track. So after they found the microspheres, there were other studies that they did in Tunguska, and the main one was really in the 60s, where they went back to the site and took other soil samples and dredged and took core samples of swampy areas, and they found just a whole abundance of these microspheres just everywhere. They were able to plot out a better map of the total destruction area, and from the microspheres they could see the intensity of the ground zero. Most microspheres were found at ground zero, and they faded away as you got to the edges of the blast radius, which is super interesting. Later studies were eventually done in the 80s, but I haven't honestly done a whole lot of research into what they accomplished, other than just taking more samples and stuff and coming to the conclusion that it was some object from space. But you still have those people out there that are just like, no, it was from Tesla. And I'm just like, bro, we have absolutely zero way. There's no way of confirming that the Tunguska event was from Tesla. Okay, interesting idea, but let's come on now. Okay, the amount of evidence to suggest that it was an object from space is overwhelming. So these people that are like, oh, it was some kind of experiment, can't stand it. But anyway, so that's the Tunguska event. I appreciate you guys for joining. I'm going to come over here to the chat, see what you guys are all talking about right now. So, starting right now, if you have a question for me, I have not been watching the chat at all, so I'm just now coming in here. If you have a question about anything, type question first, and then write out your question for me so I can hone in on that. Otherwise, I might miss it. So let's come on in here into the chat real quick, see what you guys are all talking about right now. Smash that like button. I like to see that. Question, can you do a quick recap? I came in late. Well, that's unfortunate. I'm sorry there, sir. I guess you might just have to rewatch this again. So what I'm going to actually do is I've been also recording this as well. So this isn't going to be uploaded immediately to YouTube. I'm going to go through and do my little edits in there on my little mistakes or whatever that I made to make it more appealing for a recording. This is live. It is what it is. So what are you going to do about it? But you will be able to see it all eventually. If you, this is 20th Century Refuge, and the other guy was Scrump Eldwarf. I think you say that. Anyway, 20th Century Refuge. If you met a visitor from a technologically advanced off-world civilization, and you could ask him or her one question, what would it be? One question? I'd be like, why only one? And then that would be it. And I guess I wouldn't know nothing at that point. No. Okay, so technologically advanced off-world civilizations. We're talking extraterrestrial at that point. I would ask them, how long have they been here? Because they got to be here. I mean, if I'm talking directly to them, and they're and they've been around for a long time, I want to know how long have they been here. And if they tell us they've been here for, since the beginning, I'll be like, wow, okay, what the fleet, bro. B-Tugs. How many world recreation events do you think have... Recreation. How many world recreation events do you think have happened? There's probably not a way of putting a number to them. There's probably been so many massive restarts, we'll call them, that, we haven't even discovered yet. We know of quite a few of them, but there's probably some of them, that are just thin little lines in there that we haven't found yet. And who knows if they're like some of the events where anything was really remaining that we would find. I don't know. Like the really old ones, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I see people posting questions. Let's see. Skrizer, I think it says that. Question, who made the Great Pyramids? That's a great question. Whoever built the Great Pyramids, I believe, knew way more about this Earth and solar system than what we give the Egyptians credit of knowing. And if the Egyptians did know these things and built the Great Pyramid, I believe we should know about it and stop denying that this remarkable mathematical achievement exists. Stop denying it, because people just say it's all just one big old coincidence. If the Egyptians, if they're right and the Egyptians built the Great Pyramid, they were far further ahead, psychologically, mentally, technologically, mathematically, philosophically, they were far further ahead than what is currently accepted in academia. That's what I believe, which is why it leads me to the belief that it's likely not the case that the Egyptians built the pyramids, but might have inherited the pyramids from a far older grandfather civilization, per se, right? Where they don't have the know-how anymore because it's been lost to thousands of years, and they adopted it and used it as they saw fit. I think that's possible. And for people to say it's not possible, it's just kind of laughable to me. Well, we don't have any evidence. Okay, well, do we really not have evidence? Or have we just not found any hardcore convincing evidence, proof per se yet? Okay, how much is really going to survive through 10,000 years, what's going to survive the younger Dryas than 10,000 years of natural erosion to be recognizable as anything significant to us today? The only thing that will actually survive that to be recognizable will be whatever is built out of stone. For an example, if our civilization collapses and humans just disappear, okay, give it 10,000 years and most cities you're not going to see them. Sure, there's going to be a chemical footprint. We were here. There's going to be like chemicals and minerals and stuff in a layer of earth that suggests that a major something was here, but you're not going to see it. The only thing you're going to see is whatever we carved from stone. Like I've said, Mount Rushmore and the ruins of Hoover Dam. That massive freaking hole. Where is that hole at? Hold on. Let me come over here. Browser cam. This thing, okay? This hole is going to be there for a very freaking long, these mines, right? Huge holes in the ground are going to be there for a very, very, very long time. Anything we've dug underground is going to be there for a very long time. So what I would say is that we should probably look for something like this, where people were digging into the earth in a way that would be preserved for thousands upon thousands of years. Whatever was still on the surface is going to be so eroded down or reused by a culture to adopt whatever it is that I don't believe it would be recognizable as anything significant to us today. So I think that's what I would say to that. You know, come back to this. Scroll up a little bit. The Giza Plateau is littered with sea fossils, including whale. Yes, actually. That's very true. Justin Osborne, hello. Hello there, bro. Travis Gallagher. I think I say that. Question. Okay. You don't have a question here. Tsar bomb before the Tsar bomb. Yeah, no joke. If I'm not wrong, the Tsar bomb is way bigger than the Tunguska event, if that's what you're referring to. So, it's been about an hour, guys. I think I'm going to call it right there. I apologize it's taken so long. So, actually, real quick before I do go, let me guys fill you in on what's been going on with me. So, I've recently gotten a new job. I've needed to be pulling in some more money, and so I got a new job refinishing pianos. So, like the current job is basically I take your 100-year-old piano and I make it look brand new. And so I've been doing this for about a month now, and I've been really, really focusing on it because I want it, I want to make it, I want the quality of my work to be really good. I'm very prideful about my work, I guess you could say. That's probably not the right word, but I take pride in my work is what I'm trying to say. And so I've been really focusing on that, but also I've been super focusing on my metal band, my collage core band that I've made. We have been doing very well locally. We've had probably like 8 live shows now. I think it's around 8, but we've already made a decent amount of money being a brand new band. We are Of the Oceans. We are on Spotify. So if you want to look us up now, go for it. Of the Oceans. You can find us on there. Today, we were literally filming the first section of our first music video that we will be posting on our YouTube channel of the Oceans. So also you can look that up as well. That's where you'll be seeing updates for us on there. We also are on Facebook as well. And we have made a TikTok, though. We have not posted a whole lot on there yet. So of the Oceans, go look us up right there. Really, I absolutely love the music we write. It's like, imagine taking a metal song and cramming every other genre of music you can into it, where it like flips and changes and alters, and it's heavy here and then super chill and jazzy over here. It's just, I absolutely love our stuff. Really good stuff. So that's really what I've been working on a lot, trying to focus on. So it has taken away my attention from this. And another reason why it took so long is because I was originally going to have the Tunguska video be a whole scripted out thing where I went through and did the edits of it and made it look really good. And then I ran into a major video problem and lost the ability of using like half of what I had completed so far. And I said, screw it. I guess we're just going to be doing this live. So F it. We'll do it live. And that's what we did. But there's also some things coming up in the future that still waiting on taking place, but keep your guys' fingers crossed for me, okay? It's gonna be really cool stuff eventually. Angela Hensley, your first time here. Well, hello there. By the way, guys, I want to thank all of you so much. You know, everybody who's been subscribing and liking and doing all that kind of stuff. It's been amazing because I in no way ever dreamed that I would ever have over 100,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. I kind of had given up on YouTube for a while there. I wasn't posting on here at all for a decent chunk of time, and I wouldn't even sign in. And then I logged in and I had close to 100,000 subscribers, and I was like, whoa, okay. So greatly appreciate it for you guys, from you guys, and we got a long way to go. Let's just put it that way. Things are looking up. I'm super excited on what is going to be coming in the future. I've got great plans, and I can't wait to share them with you guys, but I can't do it right now. But until then, I appreciate all you guys for joining me, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.